Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable guests, colleagues, students, thank you for joining us this afternoon for this discussion forum on women participation and decision-making in the Arab world, the case study of Tunisia and Lebanon. My name is Dina Abdelrahman. I'm the Executive Director of the Tomorrow's Leaders programs at LAU, and it is my pleasure to be the Master of Ceremony for today. Please note that the event is live-streamed through LAU's MEPI social media platforms, which will allow for hundreds of attendees to join us virtually. But nevertheless, this is actually our first Tomorrow's Leaders physical event. So I think we all deserve a clap for that. LAU's president has been instrumental in his support and conviction in the mission and vision of the Tomorrow's Leaders programs at LAU, especially during the quite exceptional times Lebanon has been going through lately. And it is my pleasure to introduce him tonight to welcome you all. Dr. Michel Maouad, President of the Lebanese American University, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nina. Madam Ambassador Dorothy Shea, the Ambassador of the United States in Lebanon, Your Excellency Ambassador Barouai Limam, Ambassador of the Republic of Tunisia and Lebanon, distinguished speakers, colleagues and friends, and especially members of Tomorrow's Leader program, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed superbly fitting for us and exhilarating for LAU to host this MEPI event addressing women participation in decision-making in the Arab world, the case study of Tunisia and Lebanon. It is so because women empowerment and gender equality were the very raison d'etre for the establishment of this institution where you are today, back in 1835 rather. When Sarah Smith landed on these shores, she was consumed by one passion: to empower women of the Arab Near East through education and to build the foundation for a future of gender equality. In so doing, she was also aware that society itself was being empowered through being able to tap all its human resources and brain power. This was the dawn of an era of the birth of a moment which you are now carrying forward to a new horizon. To have been the cradle of this movement is a privilege that in fact defines LAU and sets it apart from all other institutions of higher learning in the Arab world. Women empowerment was and continues to be the very reason for our existence, the existence of this university. The privilege is only matched by the awesome responsibility that we carry. Our Arab Institute for Women is the very embodiment of a legacy we so deeply cherish as the very core of our historic identity. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, gender equity and women's rights to equal opportunity and identical treatment under the law are now foregone conclusions and major markers of development in any society. It is no coincidence that there is a clear correlation today between social development and indeed gender awareness. Nor is this a reality that has escaped the attention of reformers in this part of the world. Well over a century ago, a celebrated Arab poet described the lot of women in the Arab world as a major reason for, quote, societal failure in the East. This was 100 years ago. The challenge before us now is to work together in order to move to the next level and ensure that women have open access when it comes to positions of senior leadership and decision-making. Only a short while ago, this word have sounded like a far-fetched dream in the Arab world. Not anymore, however, thanks to the likes of Najla Bouden, the new Prime Minister of Tunisia, who sure-footedly made her way into a man's world, really, and broke a barrier that has for long deprived society of all of its gray matter, speaking as a physician. The rest of the Arab world is not there yet, but hopefully it won't be too long. Progress towards gender equality is, in fact, irreversible. A development like the one we have recently seen in Tunisia by becoming a prime minister is uplifting and very promising. It gives us reason to believe that the efforts of many over so long have finally started to bear fruit and to show clear signs of success and of progress in this field. Such success will undoubtedly pick up momentum and accelerate from this point on thanks to key enablers such as MEPI and Tomorrow's Leaders Program. This program brings the best of America to the Middle East in a strong partnership to promote values of democracy, of gender equality, of human rights, and of the rule of law, and of transparency and equal opportunity to all. We are so proud to be part of this initiative. We are here at LAU are honored to host this event this afternoon. We are privileged to have you with us, all of you. We are proud to offer an advocacy platform for women in leadership and decision-making roles, and we are indeed very fortunate to have embraced this cause up to our point of birth. Thank you, all of you, for being here this afternoon. Good luck and much appreciation to the great work you are doing. Dina, thank you.
Thank you, President Mawad. September 29, 2021 was not a regular day for me, and many of us, I'm sure. On that day, Her Excellency Najla Bouden was appointed as the first woman prime minister in Tunisia and the Arab world. Whether we agree with the political context or not was not my main concern, really. What was real in that is that finally a stereotype was broken in our region, and that was enough. It was the beginning of many more possibilities yet to come for all of us. This is the context that initiated a valuable partnership with the Embassy of Tunisia in Lebanon. Ambassador Imam, I take this opportunity to sincerely thank you for your passion and dedication. You are a true role model for our Arab youth, and it was inspirational to work with you on this initiative. It wouldn't have been possible without your support. Ambassador Bouraoui Imam, the floor is yours. تفضل.
Good afternoon. Dear Mr. Michel Mawa, the President of the Lebanese American University, Excellencies, dear students, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm both pleased and honored to be in this auditorium to give an opening speech around the theme as important as it is crucial for the future of our societies: women participation in decision-making in the Arab world. But first of all, I would like to thank the administration of the prestigious Lebanese American University for giving us this opportunity to co-organize this event. I would like to particularly thank Mrs. Dina Abdurrahman, with whom I had a precious collaboration, and to extend my gratitude to the organizing committee. Ladies and gentlemen, this event was inspired by, first, our conviction that there is an increasingly positive dynamic around the world which pleads in favor of the consolidation of women's rights, and the need to have more women involved in the decision-making process. This dynamic, and especially in our Arab countries, deserves to be always fueled. It's up to all energies, institutions, associations, academics, media, and all interested driving forces to continue the effort to raise the general awareness around this wheel. The second motivation of organizing this event is an historical and unprecedented fact in the Arab world. The Tunisian President Kais Said's decision to appoint a woman head of a government in Tunisia. This nomination created enthusiasm among the Tunisian people, but not only, also in different Arab and Western circles. And it should reinforce the hope of seeing an Arab world, but not only where real equality exists between women and men in reality and in law. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to the prescience of the fathers of the nation, President Bourguiba and other prominent personalities, Tunisia has always been at the avant-garde of women's rights. I will not mention the achievements of Tunisian women or the path that has still to be taken in this regard. The bright Tunisian expert, Mrs. Monia Braham, here with us, she's more qualified to do it. I just would like to underline the empowering legacy of the Code of Personal Status adopted in 1956 and other progressive measures consolidated over the years. This progress paved the way for Tunisian women to enjoy unparalleled access in the region to public space, education, employment, and politics. In fact, since the 2010 revolution, women have been on all fronts fighting for democracy, equality, modernity, and cultural openness. In fact, in 2010, a revolution happened, and the democratic process has been initiated. This process of a nascent democracy has been characterized by many successes, but it has also faced challenges. This is why the Tunisian authorities have recently taken measures tending to put the democratic process back on track. And here comes to my mind the quote of Angela Davis: "The success or failure of a revolution can always be measured by the degree to which the status of women has rapidly changed in a progressive direction." I believe that the Tunisian revolution achieved advances on this matter, owing to a dynamic civil society and brave women's rights associations. Last but not least, the recent appointment of the first female Prime Minister, Mrs. Najla Boudan, and 9 women in the government is a new step, showing that the status of Tunisian women is moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, that said, I have to acknowledge that many things remain to be done to achieve a perfect equality of opportunity between men and women, that inequalities still exist, and there are legitimate demands of feminist association awaiting a positive reaction. However, I'm optimistic. Tunisia is a country that is currently cultivating a rather extraordinary capacity to have a public debate, questioning the different ways to evolve the society regarding the values of democracy, equality, and justice. And it's also true for Lebanon, whose society is rich of highly qualified human resources, a dynamic youth, brave women and enlightened men, capable to continue the fight for equality and prosperity. I would like indeed to salute the courage of Lebanese women. They were on all fronts during the revolution of October 2019, showing that they are an effective and solid partner to build the present and the future of the Lebanese nation. The Lebanese woman, a pioneer in science, culture, entrepreneurship, education, and justice, deserves to find her legitimate place in the state affairs. Let's remember that a great women leader, the Queen Elisar, Elisa Tunsi, who founded the empire of Carthage 3,000 years ago, was from Lebanon. Ladies and gentlemen, before ending my speech, I should insist on the need to continue the fight everywhere against received ideas about women, to focus on a fundamental, educative, and cultural work to create a new generation won over the cause of equality. It is important indeed to normalize in a spontaneous way the presence of women in the spheres of power, and to be convinced that it will serve the progress of our countries to have the participation of women in decision-making and in public affairs. Finally, I wish everyone a fruitful event, and thank you for your attention. I just have one more thing. I'm not going to be late. I'm really pleased to inform you that Mrs. Najla Boudan, the Tunisian Prime Minister, wanted to be with us today and to take part in this forum by sending us a recorded message that I have the honor to invite you to watch it now.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, first of all, I would like to thank the prestigious Lebanese American University in Beirut for inviting me to participate in this important scientific symposium. I'm extremely pleased to speak on a topic that is very close to my heart, namely women's participation in decision-making in the Arab world. This topic is all the more personal since the President Qais Said honored me with the appointment just 1 month ago as the first woman head of government in Tunisia and in the Arab world. This appointment is both a great privilege and a great responsibility. Indeed, in this world undermined by the COVID-19 pandemic, social and economic injustice, humanitarian crises and conflicts, it is extremely difficult for any politician to provide concrete and effective answers to all the problems of the society. And this difficulty is multiplied tenfold when the person in charge is a woman because of stereotypes and the stigma regarding a woman leadership. Even if mentalities are changing in the right direction, the reality is all too often more mixed and nuanced. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, women in the Arab world are trying today, like all women in the rest of the world, to create a place for themselves, the place they deserve. But this task is far from easy because of patriarchal, cultural, historical, societal, and sometimes even legal challenges. We must dismantle barriers to ensure women's full and effective participation in decision-making. The struggle of women to benefit from the same opportunities as men and to assess decision-making position is a long-term fight, and we have only just begun. But it's thanks to the participation of all, men and women included, and with a deeper thinking of the educational, cultural, and social precepts that we will manage to create longing change. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable guests, Tunisia has always been a leader of gender equality in our region of the world, and we are extremely proud of it. It's obvious that much remains to be done, but it's thanks to an accumulation of avant-garde policies, modernist reforms, and especially a history rich in inspiring female personalities that our country has succeeded in making important steps towards gender equality. The important political transition that we are experiencing today in Tunisia would not have been possible without the pioneering role of women, their struggles, and their sacrifice. Aware of these realities, the President of the Republic, Kais Saied, has reiterated on several occasions the importance of the role of women in all areas, as well as his intention to promote more and more the social and economic rights of women who have been severely and disproportionately affected by the health crisis. Similarly, and since we have just celebrated a few days ago the International Day for the Elimination of Violence against Women, it's important to highlight the alarming data provided by the UN reports on the exacerbation of this scourge during the period of the pandemic, confirm that violence against women in its various forms, dimensions, and repercussions remains one of the most complex problems faced by our societies. In this regard, I call on the international community to redouble its efforts and activated the necessary mechanism to combat and eliminate violence against women, developing national legislation that guarantees women's rights and protects them from violence and discrimination by strengthening mechanisms of commitment and responsibility, putting an end to the statement of impunity and creating an educational and cultural environment that enshrines the principle of gender equality. Excellencies, honorable colleagues, today, more than ever, it's essential that the new generation continues to fight started by our valiant ancestors, and that we continue to ask for more equity and more justice for a more equal world. The important upheavals that the world is experiencing today may seem threatening at times, but they also represent a great opportunity for change that must be seized. For this, all actors concerned, whether governments, civil society, media, private sector, are called open to work together to achieve the goal 5 of the SDGs and thus build a better world for future generations. Every woman and girl in the Arab region should seek to fulfill her dream, be it assuming managerial or political positions, taking up poetry, literature, or engineering, or climbing the highest mountain peaks. Thank you so much for your attention.
So, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for this message. We are very grateful. I'm sure this is a message that is inspirational to everyone here, especially our tomorrow's leaders. Moving on, so managing the Tomorrow's Leaders programs in Lebanon is definitely not possible without the valuable partnership and support of our colleagues and friends at the US Embassy in Lebanon. Indeed, the US Embassy has been a key supporter to the TL universities and the TL students studying in Lebanon. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ambassador Dorothy Shea to welcome you all. Madam Ambassador.
Good afternoon, everyone. Masal al-khair. I would like to begin by acknowledging President Dr. Michel Mawad, His Excellency Ambassador Barawi Limam, and other distinguished guests. And of course, our beloved Tomorrow's Leaders student and participant corps. I'm really glad to be with you this afternoon. And I was quite moved to hear from Her Excellency. Really, the sky's the limit when we talk about women's participation, and she's shown us that. Vice President Elise Salem, Dr. Jennifer Skut-Weiss, Dr. Miriam Safir, Executive Director Dina Abdulrahman, the MEPI team, David Lewis and company, thank you for your dedication. I am just such a huge fan of Tomorrow's Leaders. And I'd like to recognize our Tomorrow's Leaders current and former cohort who are with us today. Thank you for your commitment to the program, to your studies, but also for enthusiastically assuming the mantle of leadership as you become part of the solution to your countries as they face diverse challenges. Of course, I think first and foremost of Lebanon, which is confronting so many multi-layered crises right now. But it's not the only country confronting crises. So of all the initiatives supported by the US government, I would say Tomorrow's Leaders is unique. This Middle East Partnership Initiative funded program was created to help develop a cadre of leaders who will use the education, the concrete experience, and the skills that you all gain from your time at LAU to enact positive change in your respective countries and communities. The US government has invested over $50 million to fund this program and support the education of more than 1,000 students from across the region since 2006. Also, the United States, through USAID, has invested over $70 million in the Higher Education Scholarship Program at LAU. And recipients hail from all over Lebanon and selected areas based on merit, academic performance, and financial need. USAID funded scholars benefit from full 4-year scholarships in addition to leadership and critical thinking skills training. So I look forward to seeing the returns on all of these investments as these young people really go forward and help make the world a better place for all of us. A few thoughts on today's events. The topic of women's participation in government is personally close to my heart as a member of the female gender. But I really believe that it is vital to democracy that we include women in positions of power and influence and decision-making on issues from peace and security, economic development, and good governance. And I have to say a word about Tunisia, another country that's dear to my heart. I spent 4 years of my life there. I درست عربي في تونس كمان. So I will say barakallahu feek, as we learn to say في تونسي. But you know, I will say even in those days, and it was a good while ago, not to date myself too much, but one of my counterparts, after I studied Arabic, I went on to work at the embassy. One of my counterparts in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was a Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, and she was a female. And so Tunisia has historically been at the forefront of women's empowerment, so it's only fitting that you guys look at that case study. So I look forward to hearing the results of today's panel on the challenges and opportunities facing Arab women as they strive for true equity in government. As I wrap this up, because I want you to get on with the show, I would just like to extend my thanks again to everyone who made this possible And we're a proud, committed partner, both of you here at the LAU, our MEPI partners, and everybody who is working to make Lebanon in particular a stable, secure, sovereign, and prosperous country. We are, as I like to say, in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for the support of the American people to Lebanon in these very challenging times. Indeed, programs like the Tomorrow's Leaders program is definitely much needed today more than ever. And please allow me to also greet our colleagues at the U.S. Embassy, Mr. David Lewis and Ms. Maya Barhoush, for all their support and coordination. Thank you very much. Before we proceed with our program, please allow me to recognize the people who made this happen, if you don't mind. First, allow me to thank Dr. Elise Salem, our Vice President for Student Development and Enrollment Management, for her continued support and trust. The MEPI-TL grants at LAU are managed under her careful and diligent leadership, and for the past 6 years, SDM leadership has worked tirelessly to sustain and expand on the TL programs and safeguard the best services and programming for our TLers across the different scholarships. Second, I would like to sincerely thank the tireless TL team, everyone, they are too many. But specifically today, I would like to thank Dr. Lina Kreidiye, Dr. Jennifer Skalti-Awes, Ms. Rita Javaro, Ms. Christine Faris, Ms. Tanya Abu Arbid, and Mr. Jad Hamoud, who are really kind of the soldiers behind the scenes. Finally, the biggest thanks goes to our TLers, the students who continue to amaze us at every turn. In specific, I would like to thank our TL graduate, Ms. Wafa Garbout, and TLG scholar, Ms. Safa Difi, for taking the lead in coordinating the TL students' efforts for this event that you will be listening to in a while. Few notes before we proceed. We have distributed forms for the Q&A section at the end of the session. Please use the QR code at 5:30 exactly to submit any questions you have in order for the panel to address as many questions as possible. And before we proceed with our discussion forum, I was wondering, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, if we can take a small group photo with our guest speakers before we continue with the discussion forum. So please, Dr. Maawad, Madam Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador, David, Dr. Salem, Dr. Salem, Dr. Jennifer, please, Dr. Kreidiye, our speakers, please.
Greetings to all. Your Excellencies, LAU President and board members, experts, faculty, MEPI Tomorrow's leaders, students, amazing staff, and guests. The Arab world is rich in resources, natural and human, that are major ingredients for prosperity and development. However, and since the 1940s and 50s, inceptions of the independent Arab nation states, those were recipes for authoritarianism, inequalities, instabilities, and hence lack of democracy, at best, quasi-democracy. Well, democracy is not a gift granted. And as psychologist Donald Winkelried said in 1950, around that time, democracy is an achievement, end of quote. Democracy is about the individual and collective hard work of the people and for the people of each nation. Yes, in a democracy, the majority rules. The majority is about the inclusion, participation, representation, and protection of the human rights of all facets of the nation, to include women, who represent over 50% of the people in every country. And since 2010, and I would say since the beginning of the 21st century, the Arab people have been struggling to stand up and build peaceful and democratic nations. Women have been at the forefront of the revolutions, trying to pave their path from the bottom up to the top political decision-making ranks. The road is tough. This is why the 2000 UN Women Resolution 1325, that goes hand in hand with the United States Initiative on Women, Peace, and Security, and parallel to the gender social justice indicators, all shall be an integral part of every Arab country's national action plan. Today, we are highlighting the challenges women face, as well as celebrating their progress, and with more to come. As advocates of gender equality, we are assured that the fight will go on, so women are at every table discussing and negotiating not only women's issues, but also issues pertaining to sustainable peace and development. At this point, we at LAU community would like to extend our gratitude to the efforts, and I'm echoing Adina and the President and everyone of the United States MEPI-TL programs for supporting our youth to receive the knowledge and tools to best achieve gender equality and democracy. And of course, I also would like to insist that this conference was triggered by the passion of our TLU Tunisian students, who are proud to have the first woman prime minister in their country. Of course, Ms. Dina Abdelrahman, the MEPI executive director, courageously took the mission to put together this event. And of course, special thanks to the Tunisian ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Nourawi Limam, who wholeheartedly supported this event, not only to celebrate Tunisian democratic progress, but also to highlight the challenges and opportunities women face in the region. This conference will focus on the Tunisian and Lebanese case studies. The panel will include, as you see on the program, 4 guest speakers: lawyer Ms. Minal Manche, who is ESCWA's regional consultant on gender. Minal will give an overview of the social justice and gender equality project in the Arab world. Ms. Manche will be followed by Ms. Munia Braham, the Tunisian gender and sustainable development expert, who will showcase the achievements of women activism in Tunisia that was highlighted with the appointment of the first Arab woman prime minister. Then, Ms. Joël Abu Farhad, the co-founder and president of 50/50 NGO in Lebanon, a political activist and a woman political empowerment expert. Ms. Abu Fadil will discuss the advocacy and lobbying process to instate the women's quota system in Lebanon. Ms. Abu Farhad and her men and women team are currently running different programs about political empowerment for women, preparing female candidates for the upcoming 2022 parliamentary elections. And then our own, Ms. Miriam Sfair, director of the Arab Women Institute at LAU. Ms. Sfair will cover the important role played by the institution and other gender and human rights activism in pushing evidence-based policies on the agenda of the government. But to start up the panel discussions, Our TL students will shed light on important facts pertaining to the role of Arab women in decision-making process, something we don't usually hear. We always hear negative points about the Arab world. So our students, let's start with Ms. Safa, and then Hiba, Muhammad, Omar, Perla, and Hadi will follow in pointing the different points.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to our esteemed guests, Tamara leaders, attendants, and everyone joining through the live streaming. This is Safa Difi, TL student majoring in gender studies. I'm actually a social activist and women's rights advocate coming from Algeria. I feel privileged to open this extraordinary event and tell you how it all commenced. Now, the TL program at LAU offers Tamara leaders the opportunity to be part of TL committees that empower and engage students into organizing events within specific themes. Now, when the idea first started, the TL debate committee and the gender committee were called to be part of this wonderful initiative. Both myself and the advisor of the debate committee, Ms. Wafa Garbout, who holds masters in migration studies, called our committees to actively plan for this event. The initial phase of the organization was to conduct research about the representation of women in the Arab world. 17 TL students volunteered immediately, who are Ahmed, Alauddin, Celine, Shiraz, Ghada, Hiba, Hadi, Bahr, and Ala, Jana, Maryam, Hadi, Omar, Perla, Selwa, Yasmin, Farah, and Hala. Despite their heavy schedule with studies and midterm exams, all the TL students showed professional commitment, met deadlines, and succeeded in delivering excellent research content about 22 Arab countries. Now, the next stage consisted of reviewing and summarizing the data to be presented today, actually. And this task was skillfully achieved by TLS student volunteers. We were quite impressed by the data collected and then thought, why not exhibit their work in a poster format? And as expected, TLU, TLG, and TLS students produced the marvelous masterpiece posters that you see around this venue. Please feel free to go around after this forum and have a look at their work. Now, definitely, such a project would have never been accomplished successfully without the guidance and support of Ms. Miriam Sphere, the director of the Arab Institute for Women. I served as a link between the Arab Institute for Women and the organizing team, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Ms. Miriam, who diligently provided us with credible resources, such as the Arab Barometer, IDEA, UNESCO, UN Women, and the World Bank, Al Raida Journal, to collect data from. Now, she also advised us how to present creatively and avoid dull presentations and just the statistics. Now, last but not least, I would like to acknowledge the great efforts of the staff behind the scenes who made this event happen. Special thanks to Mrs. Dina for providing us this opportunity, and massive thanks to Dr. Jennifer School, to Tanya, Abu Arbid, and Jed Hamoud, who were very responsive to any concern 24 hours, 7 weeks a day, and to my teammate Wafa, and to all TL students who made this outstanding event happen. Thank you for having me, and welcome again.
Hello, everyone. This is Hiba Kamoun. I'm a MEPI LAU scholar from Tunisia, majoring in business. So before talking about how women actually participated in decision-making, I would like to give you a bit of a background about the region. First, the revolutions that took place back in 2011 represented a dramatic and impressive shift in the political role of women in the region. And these revolutions that were secular and egalitarian in the first place released long suppressed conservative forces, which have been eroding the advances gained by Arab feminists in recent decades. Now, according to the 2015 Gender Gap report from the World Economic Forum, the Middle East and Gulf countries rank last in terms of indicators for women's political engagement and empowerment. Moreover, women hold just under 13% of parliamentary seats in the Middle East and Gulf countries. Now, on a brighter note, recently women's political empowerment has been aided by quota systems or affirmative action policies that have succeeded in raising the proportion of women in parliament. Indeed, quotas have been the primary facilitator for women's representation in parliament in many countries. And while these examples show the value of affirmative action, it is possible to argue that the lack of conducive atmosphere for successful female political engagement will continue to limit the number of women in politics and hence their political credibility and weight. Despite the presence of women who have broken the political glass ceiling, women in politics in the Arab world remain few and far between. Now, our students who volunteered to take part in this event included some important and valuable information about women participation in decision-making in several countries that will be further elaborated by my colleagues. And now I would like to leave the floor for my teammate Hedi. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mohammed Hedi Jaza. I am a MEPI TLU scholar from Tunisia studying math at LAU. In this part of the event, we'll be discussing the outstanding women who played a remarkable political role in the MENA region. Looking at the Gulf country, Oman became the first Gulf country to allow women to vote in 1994, followed by Qatar in 1999, Bahrain in 2002, Kuwait in 2005, then United Arab Emirates in 2006, and ultimately Saudi Arabia in 2015. The Gulf country's strategy of supporting women in politics is to nominate them for appointment in political positions, especially ministerial ones. A great example is Sheikha Ahmed Al-Mahmoud, who was appointed Minister of Education in Qatar in 2003. This was followed by women holding other political executive positions in Bahrain and Oman in 2004, Kuwait in 2005, and the UAE in 2006. In the UAE, there are currently 9 women ministers. This picture right here shows Shama bint Suhail Faris al-Mazrou'i, who was 22 years old when she took office in early 2016 as the Minister of State for Youth Affairs. More recently, following the 2019 elections in the UAE, President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan stated that Emirati women must occupy 50% of the seats in the Federal National Council. The UAE was also the first Arab country to appoint a woman as a Speaker of the Federal National Council. According to a 2021 UN Women Report, the Lebanese Diab-led government had the highest percentage of female ministers in the MENA region at about 31.6%. In addition, in the judicial branch, women make up roughly 28% of the members of the judicial courts and 10% of the members of the Shura Council in Lebanon. It is also essential to highlight the effects and the efforts made by the National Commission for Lebanese Women throughout the years. And now I'm going to leave you with my teammate Omar. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Omar Al-Adarousi. I'm an applied physics major and a TLU student from Egypt. Now, let's shift to women as legislators in the Arab world. First, the Algerian government was hailed by a regional chapter of the United Nations for Women as they added 7 female ministers to their cabinet. The chapter described this action as historical and a role model for neighboring Arab countries. Now women account for more than 8 ministers in the cabinet. As is shown in the figure, regarding the Algerian parliament, the number of women shot up from only 3.16% in 1997 to 31.6% in 2012, expanding 10 times in only 15 years. Moving to Egypt, women representation in legislation started very early after the independence. In 1962, Dr. Hikmat Abu Zaid became Egypt's first female minister and was the second woman in the Arab world to become a minister. In the parliament, as shown in the graph, women representation in Egypt in the parliament increased from 2% in 2012 to 15% in 2016 to 25% in 2021. 2 main rules enhanced Egyptian women political participation. On January 16, 1956, women were granted the right to vote and stand for elections. Also, Law 21 of 1979 allocated 30 parliamentary seats for women, leading to an increase of women participation in the parliament from 8 to 35 women. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, women have recently started to have a role in decision-making. For example, in 2013, 30 women were selected in KSA to the Shura Council. Shura Council is the most powerful political body, so the inclusion of women was crucial. And for the first time in 2015, women were allowed to vote in and run for local council positions. Thank you, and now I leave the floor to my colleague, Perla.
Good afternoon. I am Perla Abu Dahin. I'm a TLS student studying psychology. Another huge milestone for women as legislators was when Amal Al-Qubaisi became the first female speaker in the House of Representatives in the United Arab Emirates. Additionally, 7 women were nominated for the new cabinet. Soon after, women started making greater strides in politics in the Gulf, with Sarah Al-Suhaimi becoming the first female chairperson of Saudi Arabia's stock exchange in 2014, and then the first woman in 2017 to move to head a Saudi government institution. She was followed by Tamadur bint Yusuf al-Rammah, the first female deputy labor minister in 2017, and Princess Rima bint Bandar Al Saud as the first female ambassador in Saudi history in 2019. She noted that, as women in a government, my role is actually to keep highlighting the issues that will help us move forward holistically, not just advocate for an elite community. In 2011, Morocco adopted quota provisions for women in their election. The law stated that 1/3 of the parliament should be of women. But after the uprising of 2011, this was changed to become a quota of 60 women. Today, 23% of the seats of the House of Representatives are held by women, according to the research by IDEA. Moving to southern Sudan, according to UN Women, there was an increase from 28 women members of parliament in 2011 to 52 women of members of parliament in 2015. But Sudanese women have long been in national politics. Sudanese women achieved their constitutional right to be represented in all public institutions in 1965. This year also marked the first woman in the Sudanese parliament. Women also played a significant role in South Sudan's independence, where they worked as mobilizers and helped the wounded, while other works on promoting peace. In 2012, women in Somalia held 14% of parliamentary seats, which was an improvement from only 8% just a few years earlier. But this was not enough. Several women's groups such as Save Somali Women and Children, Somali Women Development Center, and Somali Women's Leadership Initiative pushed hard for political leaders to enact a quota. Their efforts resulted in a parliament that is 24% women. This is a significant improvement, but still does not meet the legal requirement. These women are demanding their fair share. These women are demanding 50% of the parliamentary seats. Thank you, and now I leave the floor to Hadi.
Hello everyone, I'm Hadi Bahar. I'm biology pre-med student and a TLS student. We will be discussing women as activists in Arab world. In Iraq, women pushed for Article 14 of Iraq's 2005 constitution, which states that Iraqi citizens, men and women, shall have the right to participate in public affairs and to enjoy political rights, including the right to vote, be elected, and run for office. In addition, they pushed for the establishment of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. This committee has had positive impacts as it helped to set a quota of 25% of seats for women in the parliament. In Libya, women helped initiate the 2011 revolution and have played an important role in peace building and reconstruction of Libya. More women have become active in public life through creating and joining civil society organizations in Libya, as well as participating in national and international conferences and trainings. On the right, we can see an example of a woman active in public life, Her Excellency Najla Mangoush, who is Libya's first female foreign minister. In Syria, women have a long history as activists. Syria is considered one of the most progressive countries in the Arab world in terms of women's rights. The 1973 Constitution calls for equality among all people and includes an article requiring the government to remove all barriers to women's growth. In Yemen, women have played a critical role in the community, despite numerous challenges. They have taken on handling their families' responsibilities when needed. The UN notes that 1 of 4 families in Yemen are headed by women. Despite the serious crisis the country is struggling with on several levels, women have continued to be powerful and empowering their families. Women continue to work hard to make their voices heard in attempts to bring stability to their country. We now want to return to Tunisia to celebrate the appointment of the first woman to lead a government in the Arab world, Her Excellency Najla Bouden. In addition, Tunisia is also the first Arab country to establish a gender-equal personal status code. Currently, 26% seats in the Assembly of People's Representatives are held by women. And at the local level, women are making real strides forward. Women now make up 47% of the local council positions in Tunisia, following the May 2018 elections. As we have seen, women participation in decision-making in the Arab world has increased over the last few years. However, this is not enough. The numbers of women in political leadership in the Arab world are still very low, and there is a long road still ahead to abolish gender discrimination and achieve gender-equal societies. And thank you.
Thank you, TLers. You did a great job in the research and in highlighting the positive side of the role of women in the Arab world. Now we're going to look at the Tunisian case study and the Lebanese case study. But before we delve into those two countries, although we would love to cover most of the Arab countries, we need to look at social justice. Because without social justice, the road to equality and equity, stability and democracy is fraught with failure. And here I kindly ask Ms. Minal Manche, the ESQUA Regional Consultant on Gender Justice, to lead the presentation to discuss the regional project on social justice and the indicators that we use.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and it's an honor to be here. I'm going to be talking about gender justice and women's political participation. If I could just have the next slide, please. Oh, I can. Thank you. So women's right to participate fully and equally in politics, in legislature, in public life is a fundamental human right. I think that's our starting point. The Sustainable Development Goal 5 talks about gender equality and includes political participation within that. However, in the Arab region and all over the world, there are many barriers to that. So that begins with education. It begins with patriarchy, really, and it goes on then into education, into culture, into society, into poverty, into stereotypes, into healthcare. Within the Arab region, there are two main barriers that we face, which are institutional barriers and then sociocultural barriers as well. Sociocultural barriers meaning that there is continued underrepresentation of women because there are patriarchal notions of women and within politics as well. And institutional barriers meaning that women have the right to vote, they have the right to stand in elections, but these rights are not fully realized because of the institutional barriers. Here are some figures. We've heard a lot previously, and I've learned a lot myself, actually, about specific women in the Arab world that are making changes. Within this, I would just like to highlight that the global average of percentage of women in parliament is 25.6%, and within the MENA region, it's 15.7%. So firstly, the global average isn't extremely high. It's not 50, it's not even 30%. And within the MENA region, it's even less than that. However, Arab states are taking progressive steps, which include instituting quotas, for example, and they're instituting these steps in order to have a more level playing field, really. Women's representation has exceeded a quarter in 5 countries. The UAE specifically, as the students mentioned earlier, has 50% in the Federal National Council of Women. For women, women's representation has ranged between 15% and 25% in 8 countries, and in the remaining countries, it is less than 15%. So there is a lot more to be done to normalize the presence of women in leadership positions in politics, in decision-making, and at all levels. However, I think the work has begun, but the road perhaps is long. I'm sorry the slide is very small, but you can see the data on our website. Essentially, UN ESQA, which is where I work, and then other UN agencies, so UNDP, UNFPA, and UN Women, on the regional level are working on the Gender Justice and Law Initiative. So we started in 2018. We started with working on 29 indicators to analyze gender equality in the law. So looking at whether there's discrimination, for example, beginning from the Constitution to divorce, to marriage, to property rights. So these are the 29 indicators, which you can't see very well, but they're here. And we color-coded them according to how compliant they are with international standards. So here you can see that there's some green, there's some amber where there's discrepancies in the law, and then there's some red, which basically is for countries to map out the kind of roadmap that they could take in order to progressively change gender equality within the law. And our aim was really to encourage policy making, to encourage institutional reform, to advance the rights of women. We're now in the second iteration of the project, so in 2022 we will be releasing the new indicators, and there are 79 indicators, which includes some on political life as well, on public life as well. So as you will see here, these are kind of our draft findings. But women and men enjoy equal rights and access to hold public and political office in only 4 out of 20 Arab countries. These are Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, and Tunisia. Within that, we also have quotas. Where it's amber, that means that they don't meet the international standard of 30%. So where it's green, they meet the international standard of 30%. And so as you can see, there is a gap there. And then specifically, there's only one country which has a law that prohibits violence against women within elections and politics, and that is Tunisia. And this is something that we have to kind of confront, because women face different forms of abuse than men, and violence is very much gendered when it comes to politics. So this gives you a kind of roadmap, a snapshot of what's happening in the region. Quotas have been a main driver in changing the face of parliaments around the region and around the world as well. And we advocate for these temporary special measures in order to increase women's representation in decision-making. In terms of policy priorities, there is no development without gender equality. There is no future where we have a more equal social and economic life without women in politics, without women in the judiciary, without women in the executive. So SDG 5.5 talks about ensuring women's equal and full participation, and this means at all levels of leadership. It's not enough to have one woman within one organization and put her at the top. We have to kind of institute that thinking within the entire ecosystem. And to build that environment, we therefore need multi-level, multi-sectoral, comprehensive, holistic change. And it starts from each one of us in every position that we're in, where we make decisions. Think of how you can be more inclusive in your decision-making. In light of COVID-19 specifically, women have suffered many setbacks, and we know that in terms of the informal economy, the formal economy, care work as well. And in order to build back better, women must be at the heart of decision-making, of policy, of national response plans, which we have not seen so far, and I hope we see that in the future. So to sum it up, there is a long way to go to push for accountability and equality in the law, and to push for justice for women in the region. Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to start with our first case study, Tunisia, the success story. Ms. Munia Abraham will Secondly, share with us Tunisian women's success story, focusing on the gender parity of 2014 constitution, the women vertical and horizontal participation, the challenging issues for women advancement in our countries.
Thank you. First of all, let me congratulate LAU and partners for this wonderful gathering. Also, I'd like to extend my special thanks to Dr. Lina Gradea, to Dr. Jennifer Scoot, Mrs. Dina Abdurrahman, Mrs. Miriam Sfair, and of course, His Excellency Ambassador Limam for all the effort deployed to make this event possible. I'm actually proud to present the Tunisian case to enthusiastic and students keen to learn more about national experiences on women participations in the decision-making in the Arab region. In this presentation, In this presentation, I will provide facts and figures, and will provide through those facts and figures special focus on Tunisian women's success story, also their failures in decision-making process It is not a pure statistical exercise, but it is indeed analytic. Needless to say that assessing gender equality trends, measuring gender gaps, and undertaking evidence-based analysis are all prerequisite for strengthening the science policy interface and therefore designing innovative policies around the following 5 pillars: the strategic framework, legal framework, the institutional reforms, accountability, and of course research, comparative studies, and regional cooperation. On politics, especially women's membership first to the Constituent Assembly on 2011, then twice to the Assembly of People Representative on 2014 and 2019, hit the headlines because of the numeric performance registered for 3 elections that placed Tunisia better than the global average of 26, as you may see on the figure in the middle. And of course, this figure is much more better of all the Middle East countries, as it is shown, around 70%. Tunisia is ranked among the top 3 in the Arab region. The starting point of this journey was, as you may see on the figure on the left, very similar to the current situation in Lebanon and Qatar. It is about around 5%. The legislative election of 2009 had been, in reality, a turning point under the dictatorship regime of Ben Ali, bringing about more participation of women in the Assembly of People Representative. Therefore, it is, in my humble opinion, within reach in many Arab countries to adapt this system for women political empowerment. It is not necessarily associated to democratic transition and depend actually on political will and sometimes on international commitment for women advancement. For the women in ministerial position, Tunisia is ranking first on women participation in the government in the Arab region. This figure on the left shows the situation as of 1st January 2021. Lebanon, with its impressive governmental composition and the involvement of many women in running sovereignty ministerial department, was the best one in the Arab region. Tunisian figures since 2014 show a steady trend in women engagement to the governmental affairs. However, other developing countries are performing much more better than Tunisia. For example, Ethiopia where we register 40%, but the previous one was at the level of 46%. As you may see on the figure on the left, the weak participation of women featured the last decade in Tunisia. This is very similar to the situation of women in several Arab countries right now. Therefore, the revolution was actually the turning point to make concrete women aspiration for more active political role with the government, and more recently, the access of the first Tunisian and Arab woman to the prime minister position, and the proportion of 32% as ministerial portfolio held by women are very important achievement in Tunisia. Again, numeric performance should be complemented by assessment on effectiveness of women to deliver on their political responsibility and the capacity of women to be true agent of change within the limits and constraint of those decision-making positions. Now I will move to the local government. For women political participation at the local level, Tunisia registers more than 48% as municipal seats held by women and 19% as women occupying mayoral position, surpassing the world average of 36%, and those registered in Europe and North America, as it is shown in the figure on the right. The electoral law imposes the adoption, as Dr. Kreidia said, the adoption of the horizontal and vertical parity for the preparation of the electoral list, which explain this exceptional result. Unfortunately, the embryonic nature of the local government, the instability of municipal councils, and violence against women, women members of municipal council, and sometimes against mayors, resulted in de facto and de jure resignation of women from their function. This is a sad reality in Tunisia. That couldn't overlook also the progress. Now, let me to sum up on this first part of the presentation about women participation in politics. To point out that the transition from the quota system to gender parity system was promising for Tunisian women, and offered the opportunity, the unique opportunity, to be massively part of the decision-making processes in the country in transition. It is very important to see more and more women exercising their function as member of council, either at the national or at the local level. Numeric performance are perceived as today as achievement that need to be consolidated, especially in designing the electoral law based on the horizontal and vertical parity. We have to also to underline that this principle was adopted only for local election and not for all the election in Tunisia. And now some voices are claiming for aligning the electoral law to the electoral law on local government election. About the horizontal and vertical parity. Also, we can point at the access of women to advanced and first position, political position within elected council. We have vice president of the parliament, and more recently, the access of women to the prime minister position. By this achievement, we are in a comfortable position, in a comfortable situation. All our indicators are equal or even better than global and other regional averages. However, for effective women participation in politics, we have to fill these following gaps. First of all, we have to deploy more efforts in combating gender-based violence and especially political violence to ensure women engagement in politics. Second, we have to ensure also women's engagement and participation as electors, especially in rural areas in Tunisia. Third, we have to revisit women's participation in political parties for coherence with the dynamic of the whole national political system. Also, we have to align the functioning role of the parliament, for example, to the gender parity principle towards leadership in heading the parliamentarian commissions. Also, we have to see more active role of women members of the parliament in advocating gender justice policy, influencing national authorities and defending women's right women's right in Tunisia. Also, we have to broaden women engagement in the government to sovereignty ministerial department. We have to pay more attention to women's effectiveness in assuming their responsibility in the government. Also, we have to ensure the stability of municipal council and other prerequisites to avoid this resignation of women from their function. Other gaps should be also filled here, but it is about institutional reform that I will spend on it in the second part of the presentation. 5 minutes. Okay. Just to complement on the previous figures, I would like to add the women in the judiciary position and women in the administration, in the high administration position. For the judiciary, more than 43% of our judges are women. More than 50% succeeded every year their entry to the judiciary in Tunisia. Tunisia is well ranked among Arab countries on the access of women to the judiciary, and indicators for Tunisia and Lebanon are, as it is shown in this figure, are closer to those registered in OECD countries, for example. However, the promotion of our judge to the higher position, for example, of president of courts, poses particular problem. Also, here we can show in the table that less women are able to be promoted to grade 3, which is the highest grade for the judiciary system. In the public administration, also, we have, just I will move the slide, we have a feminization rate at the level of 35%, but this rate is indeed misleading because it overlooks the differences between different positions within the administration. The prevalence of the lowest position is very important for this rate, but we see less women occupying the highest position of general director, for example, and of general secretary. Of course, figures are uneven among different ministerial departments. This figure shows this fact comparing between the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture to the national rate. The challenge to overcome for more participation of women in either in public administration and in the judiciary is the difficulties for women to be promoted to the highest grade and to top position, top management position, and because of lack of transparent process for career management and the promotion based on equality and competition between men and women. For other positions, and we have probably also to point some success stories of women in the private sector as top managers, also as member of scientific councils, but also as diplomats. The indicators for female diplomats We see here the increase from 60% on 2015 to 10% on 2021. So, just for the way forward, we have to focus on the implementation of Article 46 because it is the basis for women political empowerment in Tunisia. It is the commitment of state to protect women accrued rights, to work and strengthen to develop these rights. Also, the equality opportunity between women and men to have access to all levels of responsibility in all domains. The parity between women and men in elected council, and the commitment of the state to take all the necessary measures in order to eradicate violence against women are the guiding principle of our policy for the future. That should be structured around these four building blocks: innovative strategic framework through the next National Gender Action Plan, legal reform, expanding and scaling up gender parity, why not gender horizontal and vertical parity. Also, some institutional reform, for example, reforming the peer council on equality and equivalence of chances between men and women, by strengthening also the local commission on equivalence of chances, and ensuring the connection between the national peer council, the regional commission, and the local commission in a multi-level scheme. It is very important. Also, revising the role of CREDIF, the Center of Research on Women, and for a mandate for monitoring, evaluation, and reporting on women's participation in politics. Also, we have to strengthen accountability through an active role of civil society organization. Why not creating an independent observatory in charge of ensuring follow-up on women's participation in politics and top management position? For research, I finish with this final idea. For research, comparative studies, we have to promote national research, of course. Comparative studies like these studies and this meeting are very interesting also, but we have also to mobilize UN agency and commissions and entities for the regional cooperation and more exchange on women participation in politics in the Arab region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Definitely the power of numbers in terms of progress are equal to the gaps that the Arab world should also work on. Let's go now to the Lebanese expert, Ms. Joelle Abu Farhat. As I mentioned, she's a 50/50 NGO founder and president, and she will discuss the advocacy and lobbying process to instate the women's quota system in Lebanon, and will showcase the efforts done to encourage women's participation and representation in different decision-making positions. The floor is
Thank
yours.
you very much. First of all, thank you for having me, and I'll be very quick, I promise. Actually, the situation in Lebanon, I wish I can be very positive. Unfortunately, it's not. It's really sad. And when we say that ministers in Lebanon are 49% or 31%, it was only one government who had 6 women out of 24 in our history. So it was 1 year, one time, and it was a government that didn't work properly. So, but we took this just to say that Lebanon is in #1, is at the highest number, which is not true. Actually, it's sad, but this is reality, and we need to work, and I need your help on that. So I'll be very quick. Quickly, I would say that the 50/50 is, our NGO, our main objective is to increase women in politics. This is the problem in Lebanon. Let me give you some figures. Actually, Lebanon is ranked 132 out of 156 countries in the World Economic Forum in 2021 in terms of gap between men and women. at economic level, health level, education, and political participation. So Lebanon is ranked 183 out of 187 countries in terms of political participation in parliament. Unfortunately, today, we have only 4.6%, 6 women out of 128 seats. And this is very low, very, very low. Let's see around the world, so let's see compared to the Arabic countries, out of 17 Arabic countries, Lebanon is ranked 15. Although Lebanon was the first, actually, country to give women, to allow women to run for office and at the same time vote. It was in 1953. And also, Lebanon was the first Arabic country and way behind, also way before other European countries like Switzerland. This is why we were called the Switzerland of the East. We were actually, yes, unfortunately. Okay, so the Lebanese mapping scene for women in political participation is this. I know it's not very nice, but this is the reality. 6 women in the parliament out of 128 seats, almost 5% in local governance, in municipalities, and 1 woman out of 24 ministers. I wish we had 31%, but we have 4% only, because the previous government actually had 6 women, it's true, but today, unfortunately, we have only 1 woman. This is the problem, because we need to instate a law to keep this going and going and going. Otherwise, it will be very aléatoire, I would say. Okay, one more bad figure. Out of 88 governments formed in Lebanon, since our independence, only 9 governments included women, and the highest number was 6. So it was in 2020 when we were ranked first in ministerial positions in the Arabic country. But can you see, 2004, 2, then 1, then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and today we have only 1 woman. In the parliament, it's the same. Out of 11 parliaments, only 8 included women, and the highest number was 6. Okay, so one white or positive, fact is 2018 elections. Actually, when we had 113 women running for election, compared to the previous election, we had only 12. So between 12 women and 113, this is the big difference, and for Lebanese women, it's historical. However, unfortunately, it's true that 113 ran, but only 6 made it to the parliament. This is why today we have only 6 women, unfortunately. For many reasons, of course, I'm going to tell you. So this is something also to note. We didn't have a quota. We submitted a quota in 2018. They didn't endorse it, yet we had 63% of the list included women in the election of 2018, which is not bad considering we don't have a quota. Now, the thing also to mention, interesting, is to know that only 10% of these candidates were members of political parties. This is to tell you that political parties are not doing their job. They're not pushing women and empowering women to run for a decision-making position and to push them to be on the political table. 35% of these women, the candidates, were independent, affiliated with political parties. And here we can see also that political parties didn't have the real intention, or the good intention, I would say, to push women, because they just put any woman outside their political parties on the list to say that, or to shine their image, I would say, to say just, we put women just, you know, because they faced a lot of pressure. And 55% were independent, of course. Okay, now, what's the solution? Quickly, I would say 3 things are very important, but the big title is a women's quota. Of course, in Tunisia, they already, in all the Arabic countries, they have endorsed a quota, and without a quota, and also it has been implemented in 128 countries around the world. So without a quota, a women's quota, women will not reach the parliament, full stop. It's very simple. because women in Lebanon, they have been trying to do a lot. They have fought for at many levels. Without a quota, we cannot reach the parliament. It has to be very clear. This is why 50-50, with the collaboration of experts and with the support of the coalition, the Civic Coalition for the Quota, we submitted a proposal now, 2-3 months ago, and it was endorsed by Dr. Inaya Azzedine, MP. She's the head of the Child and Women Commission at the Lebanese Parliament. She endorsed this quota and she submitted it to the parliament. The quota is, the draft actually, is reserving 26 seats for women. So reserved seats plus 40% on the list. This is, let's say, the best way. It was the best scenario that we thought it would be accepted by all the political parties. It was submitted in a General Assembly session at the parliament. It hasn't been endorsed yet. They dismissed it to be rediscussed within the commissions, and now we are following up with them, hoping to be able to, at least endorse any kind of a quota, but for reserved seat. Because in our electoral law in Lebanon, if we don't have reserved seat, then women will not reach the parliament, even if we put 50% on the list. We can have list with 50% women. If we don't have reserved seat, then women will not reach. Why? Because in our system, we have the preferential votes, sota tafdili. So you can put on a list of 10, 5 women. If you don't give them the preferential vote, sota tafdili, they will not have high voters. They will not reach the parliament. So for some political parties who submitted already different electoral law proposal for the quota, like 30% on the list or 33%, we told them this will not reach anywhere. We will have 0 result. So we need reserved seat, and this is the only way for women to reach the parliament. So just to say that our proposal was really very fair. It was split between Christian and Muslim. Of course, this is the Lebanese law in Lebanon. And it was across all districts in Lebanon as well. It was also in all, from all sects, I would say. We reserved seats from all sects, except for the minorities, and we kept the competition between men and women. Okay, I would like to say quickly, in 2 minutes, I would like to present some examples of women, of successful women or successful female initiatives in the world. For instance, in South Africa, women's leaders of all races, ethnicities, and political belief, they worked together on developing a national security framework based on human needs and development. Women also in Pakistan worked on creating a parliamentary caucus, multi-ethnics, multi-political parties, or multi-party, also to work on areas that affecting humanitarian crisis or extremist violence against women. In Sri Lanka as well, women worked from different political parties to create a platform to improve women's political participation. In Britain, of course, they worked together from different parties to work on employment law, equal pay, and violence against women. Some successful women in the world, let's say that the 9 countries around the world who had successful coronavirus or COVID-19 strategies were countries led by women. This is to give you an example. The first female president of Taiwan also, she had an extremely successful plan. Definitely Prime Minister of Iceland as well. She implemented the strategy test, trace, and isolate. Jacinda Ardern, of course, also. Angela Merkel, who doesn't know Angela Merkel? She funded, she did a great economic work for her country. And this is the first Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United States, as Mrs. Braham showed in her. This is also Amal Mudallali. She's the vice president at General Assembly at the UN. She's Lebanese. Rajal Gurg as well. She was appointed, or she was ranked 1 in the Middle East 100 powerful women by Forbes. Also, Rania Nashar, she's the head or CEO of Saudi Commercial. She's ranked 3rd at the 100 Powerful Women by Forbes. Elisar Farah Antonios, she's the head of the Citibank as well, ranked 26. She's Lebanese. And Caroline Fatal also, she's ranked 39 in the 100 Powerful Businesswomen. Thank you very much. This is for me.
To work as a step, because we want parity, we want it to be open more than just a quota system. And definitely we would like to see a woman not only be pointing at women how much they have, how many they have ranked in positions, but what they have done in political positions. And this is where I would go to Ms. Miriam Sfair, our LAU Arab Women Institute director, who will highlight the activism of women. And this is very important to really show us what can we do as women and men in terms of promoting gender equity and gender equality. Please.
رسالة إلى كل من سن القوانين. بلشت تكتبوا مش عارفة عم بحكي مع مين، مع الدولة، مع المجتمع، مع أهلي، مع جيراني
أو مع كلهم مجتمعين. طيب تعال نكتبها سوا، عندي أشياء بدي أقولها. نكتبها سوا، أوكي.
النقطة الأولى، لماذا تمييز قوانين الأحوال الشخصية والقوانين الباقية؟ نعم أخذتها شخصية إن كان جهل أو سخنية.
زواج، طلاق، عنف، إعطاء الجنسية.
قوانين خرافية.
لا تتذمري وبرنا، عندي كيف ما عندك حق، حقك يعني مثلا حقك تلتهي بالتفاصيل الصغار، ركزة حمص الآلية على النار، قميص البيضة على القلب لتجنب اصفرار، آلية الحقوق كون استنفار، تمسيح الكرامة بالأرض بنشاط وإصرار، والقضاء على جراثيم الأفكار المنطقية، مسحوق العيش في الخيال، ضماني 100%.
بإيدي عم بكتب، بإيدي عم طالب، بإيدي عم بطلب، بإيدي رح صوت، وصوتي رح غير، رح أقلب قرار ظالم اتاخد بوسط النهار. بإيدي عم بكتب، بإيدي عم طالب، بإيدي عم بطلب، بإيدي رح صوت، وصوتي رح غير، رح أقلب قرار ظالم اتاخد بوسط النهار. ليه عم تحكي هيك كأن مش دريانين؟ هن ركزوا واجتمعوا تيغيروا القوانين، وفكروا وتشاوروا وكتبوا بكل سرور.
ايه وشو صار، ضيعوا الورق؟
لا ضيعوا الجرور. بدها تحكي هيك كأن مش دريانين.
ما هن كسروا راسهم تيغيروا القوانين، وفكروا وتشاوروا واستنتجوا بكل سرور.
طب شو بيعملوا إذا ضاع الجرور؟ بإيدي عم بكتب، بإيدي عم طالب، بإيدي عم بطلب، بإيدي رح صوت، وصوتي رح غير، رح أقلب قرار ظالم اتاخد بوسط النهار. واحد وشوش قدامي قال
مجتمعنا انهار لما نسي نص التاني، ولما اعتبر الإهانة واقع لازم نتقبله، وتصرف مش إنساني عبء لازم نتحمله، شاف شخص عم ينظلم تكتف وتأمله، من تملة من جيل لجيل نفس القصص يتكملوا. فسيداتي سادتي، ما صار وقت التغيير، ما صار وقت نوقف النوم الكواكب والمصير.
سكر الستار، خلصت المسرحية، عذرا مشاهدينا خلص دور الضحية، لما مصيري صار بإيدي عم بكتب، بإيدي عم طالب، بإيدي عم بطلب، بإيدي رح صوت، وصوتي رح غير، رح أقلب قرار ظالم اتاخد بوسط النهار. بإيدي عم بكتب، بإيدي عم طالب، بإيدي عم بطلب، بإيدي رح صوت، وصوتي رح غير، رح أقلب قرار ظالم اتاخد بوسط النهار.
So, hi everyone. Fighting for gender justice and bringing about progress in a region so resistant to change is the AIW's lifelong mission. Our advocacy for women's rights and gender equality has been unwavering since 1973. Being an independent convener, working at the intersection of academia and activism, we serve academic and activists, policymakers and practitioners, students and the youth in Lebanon and the Arab region to build partnerships, and form strategic collaborations to advance gender equality. We strive to serve as a platform for our youth to develop and advance their feminist agendas in the making and help them take action and claim their space and make their voices heard. Our song, In My Hand, is one such example. This song was written by AIW in close collaboration with activists Michelle and Noel Kisirwani, and it was sung by our student, Lynn Jbaili, and one of our graduates. It's a positive message to our youth to ascertain that, in our hands, change is bound to happen. One of the key ways to incite change is to put decision-making power into the hands of women, both in politics and beyond. Pushing for women's political participation at the local and national level in Lebanon and around the Arab region is a key pillar of AIW's mission. AIW has been part of many coalitions funded over the years to support women's political participation in Lebanon and work actively with civil society to advocate for women's representation in the political arena. We just heard the experts enumerate the importance of women's representation, and I'm here to confirm that fostering gender equality should be a non-negotiable imperative for many reasons. One of them is that it's the key to sustainable development. I will give a few practical examples of the active role women have played on the ground and the importance of feminist activism. On the level of the country, feminist activists were the voice of change during the October 17 revolution that was overwhelmingly female and young, and we at AIW were part of it. These women played multiple roles: leading political organizing, civic engagement, gender justice advocacy, de-escalation of violence, mediation, online mobilization, and media coverage. Feminist demands were echoed where the importance of women's political participation was strongly voiced among all factions, with the necessity of having a quota system in the parliament, the essential work lacking on the level of sexual and reproductive health and rights, the right of women to confer their nationality to their children and husband, the shortcomings of the law criminalizing gender-based and domestic violence, and the importance of amending it, the dire need to get rid of the archaic personal status codes permeating all aspects of our marriage, our divorce, child custody, and replacing them with a civil law that governs all citizens, the abolishment of the kafala system that oppresses and exploits migrant workers, and the importance of highlighting the plight of marginalized groups. The depoliticization of feminist demands was as prevalent in the last 2 decades as it was, and focusing on singular issues such as women's political participation, violence against women, and personal status codes suddenly withered because of the need to become intersectional. There was a determination and conviction across various groups within the women's movement that truncating demands, in other words, decontextualizing gender issues from the broader socioeconomic and political landscape, was no longer doable and was counterproductive to the large goals of the movement. Even the women's rights organizations that had historically disregarded and disagreed on certain feminist demands, specifically the rights of non-heteronormative groups, had to put forward an intersectional approach for fear of being left behind while the feminist movement progressed. The revolution and its intersectional demands also managed to appeal to the young generation, especially young women and girls who occupied the streets along with their male counterparts and colleagues, calling for long overdue reforms. They skipped school, slept on the streets, and tried to make use of the time to serve the country by helping with the cooking and cleaning, closing roads, preparing chants, and composing revolutionary songs. To quote our VP, Dr. Elise Salem, the streets and not the universities were setting the agenda and calling for a future that was more pragmatic, more inclusive, and more hopeful than anything before. And women were at the center of it. The fearless and creative leadership of women activists during the Thawra has shaken things up across across Lebanese institutions, universities included. I close the quote. The revolution and the way it managed to put gender rights at the forefront shifted the dynamics between various women's rights and gender equality organizations. It broke the barriers in terms of what was once considered to be a taboo subject and encouraged citizens to speak out against gender discrimination. What happened yesterday in Tripoli is one such example. Shaming the perpetrator of sexual harassment is one such example in a conservative city like Tripoli. And so, when the recovery plan put forth immediately after the Beirut blast by various international organizations and governments, and this recovery plan failed to mainstream gender, feminist activists and women's rights organizations openly criticized the plan as gender blind and stressed the importance of gender in recovery. They called for the inclusion of gender specialists and experts in decision-making bodies. Towards the end, 46 women's rights organizations and feminist organizations come together, 50-50 included, along with others, and drafted the Charter of Demands in Lebanon, spearheaded by UN Women. The charter called for putting feminist groups and women's groups at the heart of the response plan and demanded that aid be channeled to civil society organizations and delivered in an equitable and just manner. The charter called for recognizing and addressing existing gender inequalities and ensuring that the needs and priorities of all marginalized groups be taken into consideration, and that the process should be transparent, subjected to due diligence, as well as clear accountability mechanisms. Importantly, the Charter of Demands also generated an informal feminist civil society platform, the Feminist Forum, that is expected to serve as a supervisory body for the advancements of gender rights, inshallah. We hope so. Women's representation in politics and in decision-making positions is important. However, the gender card is often played by those in power to appease the demands of women's groups. Token women will remain token women, and the recurrent question is, will they act in favor of women's interest? Women's presence does not necessarily mean women's power, nor that these women will act in favor of gender rights. What we want is a feminist perspective in any cabinet that translate to policies, meaning that we can reform discriminatory policies that have been around for far too long and implement policies that are in line with global standards for women's equality.
1 minute.
Other than the disregard for women at the decision-making table, we need to fight the explicit disregard of elected women. We need to fight the invisibility of women's proposals or projects, the unequal distribution of time to speak in legislative proceedings, and we need to protect women politicians and electoral candidates from gender-based violence, which works to reinforce traditional gender norms and to further exclude women from politics. We need to fight a lot of other things as well. The personal is political, I'm ending, as we all know, and for the democratic systems to operate efficiently and functionally, the equal representation and participation of women in politics and public life is a non-negotiable imperative. Women's political leadership results in better outcomes for women and girls, as well as for society as a whole. The argument for women's political participation is irrefutable. Democracy cannot exist or persist if half of its population is not wholly and equally engaged in decision-making. Unlike many discussions and political discussions that start with disagreement and disaccord, this conversation opens with consensus. Nothing about us without us. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us and listening to the rich interventions of the regional experts, activists on gender and women's issues. And now we wanted to have a Q&A session, but we actually were going to do it informally over the reception. So please all join us at the reception I think it's in the other room.
Yes, it's in the lobby.
So,
Please,
in
تفضلوا. We have a
lobby. So we
reception
can ask the
for us to
questions
network.
informally.
Tap
Thank
on
you.
the insightful information that was shared by the experts. Thank you, everyone, for everything. This was insightful.